Hi there, welcome to episode 3 of Photon Catchers. I'm your host Mark, and I'm here to help you improve your photography. Whether you're just starting out in creating images or you're a seasoned pro, there's always something new to learn. This week we're going to talk about how you can improve your mobile photography by using post-processing or editing techniques. And we'll also have a roundup of the latest news. But first, we're going to go on a journey. For some of you, this journey could be starting today. For others, it began many moons ago, possibly back in the days when all photographers shot onto film. It's a voyage of discovery and wonder, full of tough choices and potentially wallet-busting expense. This is my guide to getting started in photography. As a beginner in photography, you may have no idea where to start. You could be only using your phone camera, and that's a good place to begin. If you haven't heard it yet, take a listen to last week's episode and my guide to getting the most out of the camera you always have with you. But stick with us for now, as we'll have lots of stuff for everyone in this episode. The first thing you need to do is buy a camera. So, here's a question I get asked a lot. What camera and lens setup do you recommend for someone just starting out in photography? Well, there are so many makes and models of cameras and lenses, sometimes designed for specific uses, and it can be confusing if you don't understand the terminology. A good entry-level DSLR or mirrorless camera with a kit lens is a solid starting point. But, I hear you ask, what is a DSLR and what does mirrorless mean? There's so much I could say about this topic that we'd need a whole episode, so I'll keep it brief. Firstly, DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex. This type of camera uses a mirror mechanism, so light entering through the lens is reflected by a mirror up into an optical viewfinder using a prism. This allows you to see exactly what the lens sees. A mirrorless camera doesn't have this mechanism. Instead, light passes directly through the lens to the image sensor, and the photographer composes shots using the camera's LCD screen or an electronic viewfinder. We call this an EVF, and it displays a digital preview and overlays information, offering a more accurate representation of the final image. DSLRs are generally larger and heavier due to the mirror and prism system. Mirrorless are more compact and lighter. Generally, a DSLR has a longer battery life, as it doesn't need power for an EVF and constant sensor operation. Because mirrorless cameras tend to have a smaller body size, they usually have a smaller battery, which may have a shorter life. Additionally, they're powering an EVF and continuous sensor, so you could end up swapping your battery more often. I also mentioned a kit lens. What's that? A kit lens is a basic lens that is often bundled with a DSLR or mirrorless camera when purchased as part of a kit. These lenses are designed to provide a versatile range of focal lengths suitable for various photography situations, making them well suited for beginners. A common kit lens might have a focal length range similar to 18 to 55 mm, which will give you wide angle to short telephoto perspectives. This makes them suitable for a variety of shooting scenarios, from landscapes to portraits. Kit lenses are usually compact and lightweight, making them easy to carry and handle, which is beneficial for users who may be new to photography and want a simple setup. Since kit lenses are included in camera packages, they are often more affordable compared to buying a camera body and lens separately. Kit lenses are a good starting point for beginners. As you become more experienced and specific about your photographic needs, you'll most likely consider upgrading to higher-end lenses for wider apertures, better image quality, and more advanced features. So that's some of the terminology out of the way. Now here's some things to think about when choosing the right format for you. If you prioritize a lightweight and compact camera for travel or everyday use, a mirrorless camera might be your best option. However, if size and weight are not a significant concern, a DSLR could be a good choice. Consider your photography interests. If you often shoot fast-moving subjects like sport or wildlife, the faster and more advanced autofocus systems in some mirrorless cameras might be beneficial. However, for general photography, a DSLR's autofocus may still be sufficient. Test cameras to experience both optical viewfinders and electronic viewfinders. Some photographers prefer the optical experience of a DSLR, while others appreciate the information-rich EVF of mirrorless cameras. Ultimately, personal preference will play a significant role in this decision. Both DSLR and mirrorless systems offer excellent image quality and a range of features. The choice depends on individual preferences, intended use, and comfort with the specific technology. My advice would be, don't get stuck on a brand name. Unless you've got a burning preference for one of them, be open to choosing the brand that best suits the style of photography you wish to pursue. Do research online. Go to a camera shop and get your hands on the kit. Judge the way the bodies feel and how comfortable they are to hold. The camera body is something you're likely to be using for a good few years, so research well for the features that you think are important for the photography you'd like to do. Your budget will also be a factor when making your decision. Crucially, the choice you make now may dictate the brand you use for the rest of your photography career, so choose wisely. As you gain more experience, you'll want to expand your lens collection to give greater variety in your compositions. Lenses can be expensive, but good quality lenses will last a lifetime and will fit onto future camera bodies of the same brand. Something to think about with lenses is that there are several third-party companies who make amazing optics, and often at a much cheaper price when compared to those made by your brand. Finally, make sure you buy a camera bag or a case to keep all your kit clean and safe. Any established photographer will confirm that your camera bag is never big enough, so think ahead a little and allow extra room for when you start to increase your lens collection. But in time, you will end up buying a bigger bag. So, you've made your choice and bought your first camera and lens. Now what? The first step should be to have a read through your camera manual. It may seem like a daunting task, but it will be extremely worthwhile. Knowing and understanding what all the buttons and dials do is essential to get the most out of your new purchase. Your camera is a tool, and you can use this tool to create some amazing images, but you will need to know how it works first. To keep it simple for now, your camera has 4 main modes known as P, S, A, and M. Canon chose different abbreviations for their modes, so if you have a Canon body, you'll have P, TV, AV, and M. Your camera may have other modes, such as Sport or Portrait. These are automated modes, and you want to try to have some form of control over what you're doing, so we'll focus on just the main 4. P is for Program mode. The camera will automatically choose the aperture and the shutter speed for you based on how much light is coming into the lens. This is fine for point and shoot situations, but gives you no control over how fast the shutter is going to be or what aperture the camera is going to choose for you. S is for Shutter mode. On a Canon this is called TV, which means time value. Using this mode we prioritize the shutter speed, which means how long the shutter is open and letting light onto your sensor. It's usually calculated in hundredths of a second, although for long exposures we can actually calculate in seconds or even minutes. A is Aperture mode, and on the Canon they use AV or aperture value. This mode prioritizes the aperture size in your lens. Aperture sizes use numbers which start with an F, and they indicate the size of the opening that lets the light through at the end of the lens. The smaller the F number, the bigger the opening, and consequently the more light you let into your camera. The final mode is M. This stands for manual and is where you have full control over both the shutter speed and the aperture size. Although each of these modes have their place, you should aim to get away from program mode as soon as possible. It's fine for when you're just starting out so that you can see the shutter speed and aperture size the camera has chosen for you, but ultimately you want to be in control of one or both of these. Try taking photos using each of the modes. Learn how to alter the shutter speed using the dial and how to change the aperture size too. The next step is to begin to understand the exposure triangle. For this, we need to introduce a third element to go with shutter speed and aperture. This is called ISO. Now, ISO is a throwback to when we shot with film. The ISO number was a way of measuring the speed of the film, which meant how sensitive it was to light. The higher the number, the more sensitive the film was, and the lighter the image would be based on the same exposure settings. You choose the film speed, or ISO, to suit the lighting conditions you had at the time, or for a specific look or style you were aiming for. So, in bright lighting, like a very sunny day, you'd likely use an ISO 100 or 200 film. On a bright but slightly cloudy day, you may opt for an ISO 400 film, and when shooting on an overcast day, you could have chosen an ISO 1600 film. Now, the downside of using faster film was that the images got grainier and less sharp as the ISO number increased. This effect still happens in digital cameras, and we call it noise. The higher your ISO, the noisier the image may appear. As well as reducing the image sharpness and detail, the colours can also appear more washed out and less vibrant. So, back to our triangle. You'll need to see this exposure triangle diagram, so go to the Photon Catchers Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/Photon Catchers. Or you could find it on Instagram at www.instagram.com/photon_catchers. The details for these are also in the podcast description. So once you've found the exposure triangle diagram, you'll see there's a lot of terminology used that we haven't covered so far. It may seem confusing at first, but once you understand the triangle, then getting better exposures and becoming more creative will be easier. So, on the bottom edge we have shutter speed. A slower shutter means a longer time open, allowing more light onto the sensor, thus making the image brighter. If you have moving objects in your image, then the longer time frame will likely result in some motion blur. A faster shutter means a shorter time and less light, making the image darker. Moving objects will be frozen in time and should be sharper with no blur. On the left of the triangle we have aperture. A wide aperture in your lens allows more light onto the sensor, producing a bright image, and gives you a shallow depth of field. A small aperture lets in less light, creating a darker image, and gives you a deeper depth of field. Finally, on the right we have the ISO. The higher ISO allows more light in, creating a brighter image, but it does have more noise. Lower ISO lets less light onto the sensor, creating a darker image, and it will have less noise. You need to understand the properties of shutter speed, aperture, and ISO to get the perfect exposure, and it may require adjustment on one or more of these three sides to get the image you want. So you can see it can be a fine balance to get the shutter, the aperture, and the ISO to be just right to create your perfectly exposed image. The key is to use your new camera a lot. Get out as often as you can and photograph different things, fixed objects and moving objects. Shoot the same things in different lighting conditions and see how the exposure triangle works for each shot. The more you practice, the better you'll get. If you have any questions about cameras, lenses, or just getting started in photography, join the Facebook group and ask me. Well, that's it for now with my short introduction. Coming up next, This Week in Photography. In the latest tech update, Samsung has unveiled a new line of SD Express micro SD cards featuring impressive specifications including a whopping 1 terabyte capacity. The series will kick off with a 256 gigabyte capacity currently in the sampling phase, gradually increasing to a mass-produced 1 terabyte variant. Samsung say they are committed to addressing the surging demands of mobile computing and on-device AI, and emphasize that despite their compact size, these micro SD cards deliver SSD-like performance, catering to modern and future applications. Notably, Samsung claims the title of the industry's first micro SD cards employing the SD Express specification, ensuring maximum transfer speeds of up to 800 megabytes a second, a significant leap from the UHS-1 interface capped at the 104 megabytes per second. Samsung's comparison to UHS-1 does raise questions, however, considering the existence of faster alternatives like UHS-2. This groundbreaking 1 terabyte micro SD card incorporates 8 layers of the company's 8th generation 1 terabit VNAND in a micro SD form factor, previously achievable only in SSDs. Targeting the demands of the new era in mobile computing and on-device AI, Samsung's microSD cards present a powerful solution. However, there are caveats to consider. SD Express's backward compatibility with standard SD is limited to UHS-1 speeds, rendering the promise of 800 megabytes a second transfer speeds applicable only under specific conditions, such as using a compatible capture device or an SD Express reader, both currently extremely rare in the market. Despite these limitations, Samsung plans to release the cards in Q3 of 2024 without disclosing pricing details. The adoption challenges of SD Express by hardware manufacturers persist, with no camera makers opting for the specification, instead favouring CF Express or the older UHS-1 and UHS-2 specifications. Last week we talked about getting the most out of your mobile phone camera, but just taking a photo isn't always enough, and we may wish to enhance the image we've captured. This is where we need to understand how images can be enhanced to guide the viewer's eye and make the photo as appealing as we can. The Photos app built into your smartphone typically comes with some basic editing features to enhance and modify your photos. Common editing tools found in these apps include crop and rotate, adjust the framing and orientation of your photo, brightness and contrast, so you can modify the overall lightness and darkness of the image, saturation and vibrance, enhances or tones down the colors in your photo, exposure controls the overall brightness of the image, filters and presets apply predefined styles to quickly change the look of your photo, sharpen and blur, refine the clarity or add soft focus. White balance adjusts the color temperature to correct for different lighting conditions. You can have some noise reduction to reduce the graininess or the digital noise, as we spoke about earlier, in low light photos. Finally, red eye removal fixes red eyes caused by the camera's flash. For more advanced editing, you can explore third-party apps that offer a broader range of features. Some popular ones include Adobe Lightroom Mobile. This app provides powerful editing tools including advanced color correction, selective adjustments, and raw editing capabilities. Snapseed, developed by Google, Snapseed offers a variety of tools like lens blur, glamour glow, and drama, making it a versatile option for advanced editing. VSCO, known for its stylish filters and presets, also includes manual controls for fine-tuning exposure, color, and sharpness. Afterlight combines essential editing tools with filters and textures, allowing you to add creative elements to your photos. Prisma. If you're interested in artistic effects, this app transforms your photos into artwork using various styles inspired by famous artists. Whichever app you decide to use to enhance your photos, you need to maintain a natural look, so here's my tips for doing just that. Adjust the lighting thoughtfully. Be mindful of overexposure or underexposure. Gradual adjustments are always best. Use saturation and vibrance adjustments moderately to enhance the colours without making them look too unnatural. Focus on specific areas of your photo rather than applying global changes. This helps maintain a balanced look. While the filters can be fun, avoid using extreme or overly stylized ones that drastically alter the original colours and tones. Be cautious with sharpening tools. This avoids introducing artifacts into the image and preserves the natural texture. When cropping, consider the composition and try to maintain the integrity of the original image. Ensure that the white balance is accurate to represent the true colours of the scene. You should always experiment with these features and apps to find a workflow that suits your style best while preserving the natural essence of your photos. Well, that just about wraps up our very quick look at image editing on your mobile device. We'll go into greater editing detail in future episodes when we talk about desktop software. Before we go, don't forget that the photography and video show is coming up in a couple of weeks at the NEC in Birmingham. It's a great place to get hands-on with loads of kit from all of the manufacturers who will have their entire range of bodies and lenses available to play with. It's the ideal time to make comparisons before you buy. There's usually some great show deals too, so you could grab a bargain. I'll be there to record some interviews and get top advice on all of the latest gear. Maybe I'll see you there. I'll be back next week with more ways to help you improve your photography. So until then, it's bye from me.